Not yet.
Hi.
Hi, you guys. Today we're going to read a story. No more pencils, no more books, no more teachers' dirty looks. Hooray, Gilbert shouted, heading for the door. Today's the last day of school. Here are the cookies, Mother said, and a present for Mrs. Bird. She put the cookies and the present into his backpack as he ran out the door. Gilbert waved and said, "Don't forget to come to the party this afternoon. Mrs. Bird is giving out awards." Just like we did awards. Patty was waiting for him outside. She looked sad. "I'm going to miss school," she said. "I like being in Mrs. Bird's class." "Me too," Gilbert said, "but I like summer vacation even better." When they got to the classroom, Mrs. Bird was changing the number on the countdown banner. Yesterday it said 2 days left of school. Today it said 1 day left. Mrs. Bird didn't look very sad. Louis ran in the classroom singing, "No more pencils, no more books, no more teachers' dirty looks." Mrs. Bird heard him, but she didn't give him the dirty look. She smiled and said, "Settle down, everyone. We have a lot to do this morning, starting with clearing out your desk." "My desk is already clean," Philip said proudly. Louis rolled his eyes and said, "Maybe you'll get the Clean Desk Award." "No," Philip sat back. "I'm going to get the Best Reader Award. Everyone knows I'm the best reader in the class." Gilbert wondered if he'd get an award. He wasn't the best reader, and he certainly didn't have the cleanest desk. Neither did Mrs. Bird. When she emptied out her bottom drawer, 4 big packs of gum spilled out onto the floor. "Oh my," she said. "Here's your gum, Louis. You can have it back now." I guess she had a June box too, but hers was in the drawer. "That's okay," Louis answered, scraping the green paint off the side of his desk. "You can keep it to remember me by." Mrs. Bird laughed and said, "I don't think I could ever forget you, Louis." Before lunch, they practiced their songs and poems for their parents. Frank was nervous, and Mrs. Bird told him to pretend that everyone in the audience was sitting in their underwear. That made Frank giggle, and he wasn't nervous anymore. "Thanks," Frank said. "My grandma and grandpa are coming, and I don't want to mess up." Then he giggled at the thought of his grandparents sitting in the audience in his underwear. "You will all do fine," Mrs. Bird said proudly when they were finished. "And remember, after the poems, I'll give out the awards, so remain seated at the front of the room." At recess, Gilbert and Patty talked about who might get awards. "Philip is the best reader for sure," Gilbert said. "Frank is good at math," Patty added. "He might get a math award." "And you're the best speller, Patty," said Gilbert. "I know you'll get an award for that." Patty smiled and said, "Well, you're the best at. Before she could think of what Gilbert did the best, Louis said, "What's the big deal? Everybody gets an award." Gilbert hoped that was true, but he didn't know what he was the best at. When they returned to the classroom, all the desks were clean, all the books were boxed, and all the supplies were packed. It didn't feel like Mrs. Bird's classroom anymore. Just as Gilbert started to feel sad, the parents began to arrive. Then Gilbert started to feel nervous. He said his poem over and over in his head. Mrs. Bird welcomed everyone into her class. Then their class sang the songs they had practiced. Louis sang the loudest, and Gilbert wondered if there was a loud singer award. Soon it was time for Gilbert to recite the first poem. He took a deep breath, stepped forward. He said, "Summer's here. I can't wait, but first grade was really great. Mrs. Bird's the very best, even when she gives a test." Gilbert sat down again. Whew! He didn't make a single mistake. Maybe he would get an award for the best poem. But Margaret's was good also. We learned to spell, we learned to read, we learned a lot of things indeed. Even Frank said his poem without a single mistake. "I love numbers, I love math. I think counting is even in the bath." But when it was Philip's turn to recite the last poem, he didn't step forward. His knees were wobbly and he looked very pale. He had forgotten his poem. Mrs. Bird handed him a copy, but when Philip tried to read it, all that came out was a squeak. Gilbert's little sister Lola started to laugh, and Gilbert gave her a dirty look. No one knew what to do, so Gilbert took the paper and started reading. Each day in school, I try to be as good a student as I can be. And if I have one book or three, then Philip finally remembered the rest and blurted it out. I'll always have a friend with me. Everyone clapped and Philip turned red. Philip was still red when Mrs. Bird gave him the Best Reader Award. Patty got the Spelling Award, Margaret got one for handwriting, and Kenny had the best attendance. Even Louis got an award for being the funniest. Gilbert stood there as one by one the ribbons were given out. He thought he might get a Best Artist Award, but Susan got it instead. Maybe there wouldn't be an award for Gilbert after all. Finally, Mrs. Bird said, and the last award goes to Gilbert. He gets the Good Friend Award. Gilbert was happy. Now he knew what he was good at. He thought Mrs. Bird was the best teacher ever. As they ate the cookies and cake, Mrs. Bird said, I have a gift for each of you to take home, a memory book of pictures from your first grade class. Hey, Louis said, flipping through the pages, here's a snowman that Gilbert helped me make. And our trip to Pilgrim Town, Philip added, Gilbert was my buddy on the bus. And the last page of the memory book was a picture of the whole class, including Mrs. Bird. I'm really going to miss you all, she said. She looked like she was going to cry. Maybe Mrs. Bird should open up her gifts, Patty whispered. I bought her a nice plant. That'll cheer her up. I'm giving her a picture of myself, Philip whispered back, so she won't forget me. Gilbert's gift was a t-shirt that said, Number 1 Teacher. Now he wished he was giving her a picture of himself. What if she forgot who Gilbert was? Sadly, Gilbert said goodbye to Mrs. Bird. I wish you could always be my teacher. Mrs. Bird smiled and said, Me too, but remember, you can still visit me when you're in 2nd grade. It's not the same, Gilbert answered quietly. The bell rang and everyone took turns hugging Mrs. Bird until Mrs. Bird was all hugged out. As they walked home, Gilbert said, Mrs. Bird looked so sad when we left. What will she do all summer without us? Patty sighed and said, She'll probably be busy getting ready for her new class. Then Gilbert started to sniffle. Mrs. Bird was awfully sad, she said. She's going to miss me very much. Father said. I know what will make you feel better. They were standing in front of an ice cream shop. Gilbert saw all of his friends inside and he started to feel better. No one looked sad at all. Everyone was happy that summer vacation was finally here. Especially Mrs. Bird. She's wearing a shirt. I hope you guys liked that story. It was super fun, and I bet a lot of you are probably feeling that way since it's the end of the year and we haven't really got to see each other in a while and see all our friends. And just know that even though I might not look sad on some of the meetings, I'm so sad. I already miss you guys so much. And it's going to be so sad not getting to see you guys next year as 2nd graders. So I love all of our Zoom meetings that I get to see your faces and hope that I still get to talk to you. All right, I'll talk to you soon. Bye.